Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Howling reviews in my Howling playlist, and there will be spoilers today, oh most definitely. So this one came out in 1989 and the franchise was on a little bit of a roll by this point, at least in terms of quantity, definitely not quality, because Howling 3 came out in 87, number 4 came out in 88, and this one came out in 89, so that's 3 Howling films in 3 years. And yet, different directors each time, none of the actors carried over, the continuity is just completely unconnected from film to film, it's a little bit weird. This one was directed by Neal Sundstrom, you might remember him from such films as Sonia and Johnny and Tiger Tiger Burning Bright. And of course, his magnus opus, Howling 5, The Rebirth. I didn't recognise any of the actors in this. For a second I thought there was a familiar actor though, because on the credits at the beginning the name Elizabeth Shue pops up. And I thought to myself, is that Elizabeth Shue and they've just messed it up? Or maybe Elizabeth Shue went by a different name in the 80s? But no, it's definitely not Elizabeth Shue. And having now seen the performance of Miss She, I can tell you that a shoe is definitely worth more than a she in the movie industry. Something else that's a great pity is the fact that I once again had to watch another one of these films in a really boxed in, grainy, snowy sort of visual. It just wasn't very good at all. And what made it worse this time was the fact that, okay, so last night I actually watched 2 films. Firstly, I watched Top Gun Maverick, and visually it was glorious. Like, the film filled my 65-inch TV. It was in Ultra HD. It looked $1 million. Tom Cruise flying around in all these F-19s. Not a great movie on the whole, but to look at, it was stunning. And then I took a little 10-minute break and watched Howling 5, and it was so hard to go from one extreme to the other. It really was. Like, my eyes were just screwed up trying to make the transition. I was just peering forwards like, This film is not on Amazon Prime, by the way, if you're watching this review in the UK. So I watched 3 and 4 on Prime for free, and I did search again on Prime for this one, but it's not on there. They've got 3, 4 and 6, but not 5 for some reason. But luckily, I managed to find a free version of this on YouTube, which I was really grateful. It really would have pained me if I'd have had to have paid out a small fee to watch this film in this type of format, to be honest with you. So if you fancy watching this film after watching this video today, by all means, check it out on YouTube. I dare you, I double dare you, I triple dare you. This film takes place entirely in Budapest. There's this spooky old castle which hasn't been open to the public for 500 years, but now it's been bought or inherited by somebody who calls himself the Count, although he sounds like he's from the East End of London, bizarrely, but let's not dwell on that. He invites 8 random people to come and stay at the castle as part of the grand reopening. These are mostly English people, though there's also a Dutch countess in there, there's a random tennis star, a photographer. It's a strange little group. I don't get why these guests accept this offer, unless it's for some really large payment and it's just not mentioned in the script, or maybe I just don't remember it being mentioned in the script. But it did occur to me, why are these people actually agreeing to go to bloody Budapest for this? It's not like they've got anything to do once they get there. There's no film crew there, like making a film or a documentary out of it. So why exactly did they agree to this? You know, why would a tennis star, for example, agree to just go to a random spooky castle in the middle of nowhere? Often in these types of horror movies, there is a point to the guests going to some strange location. You know, like in John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, the characters go to a church, but they've all got jobs to do once they're there. You know, they're investigating this strange green vial or something. Then in Puppet Master, you've got these paranormal investigators going to the hotel, and they've all got jobs to do while they're there, and then the puppets start giving them mayhem. But in this film, the people going to the horror location have got no reason to go. They just get there, and once they're inside the building, it's like, okay, we'll just stand around and chat and have a look around and wait for the horror to begin. So, I don't know, it just seems a bit off. Could they not have just done the 8 tourists get off a broken down bus routine, you know, and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere and, oh, there's a castle in the distance. Maybe that might have been a better way to go, I don't know. Something else that's a little bit off is the fact that the Count says to his guests, nobody's stepped foot in this castle for 500 years, you're going to be the first. But this is obviously a lie, because when they get there, a butler and a maid come out of the front door. Clearly they've already been in there setting up the bed sheets and making the place fit for purpose. And you've got to think that the Count would have actually gone in the building to decide if he wants to buy it, you know, or just to have a little poke around, but whatever. So all the guests get inside the building. So there's 8 of them, the butler and the maid and the Count, aka budget Ian Beale from EastEnders. And then they all start just wandering around and splitting off into smaller groups, and people start getting picked off one by one by what we know coming into this film is a werewolf. And about halfway through this, we realise that the werewolf is one of the guests. But this actually makes the film a bit more fun, because it just gives us something to occupy our brains with. You know, we can sit there as a viewer and try and puzzle out who is the werewolf. And I've got to say, I actually guessed it. And normally I don't guess these sorts of things. You know, every Scream movie that comes along, I never guess who the killer is. But on this occasion, with Howling 5, I did correctly guess who the werewolf was, albeit there were only 4 people left in the movie at the time. But I would be curious to know in the comments, from anybody who's seen this film, did you also guess who the killer was in this? Because it just seemed to me like it was surely the person the film was pointing at the least, and it turns out that I was absolutely spot on with that. A lot of this movie ends up being the characters wandering around the vast maze which is this castle. Believe me when I say there is a lot of walking and exploring and searching and going down corridors and flashlights out and secret passageways here and underground mazes there. There's just lots and lots of exploring and walking and wandering, and it gets a little bit repetitive after a time, but also it's strangely atmospheric. I think this film definitely benefited from having whatever this place was to film in. I don't know if it's a real castle, probably just some set somewhere, but it's actually quite a decent little location that they've managed to procure for themselves, because I liked a lot of the rooms and corridors in this. It looked kind of spooky sort of, and the set design is reasonable for a film with this limited amount of budget, I suppose. There's not much in the way of kills. Most of the deaths in this movie are literally a werewolf will pop out and then we cut away to the next scene. You don't actually see anything. But then very late in the day, there is a kind of double kill, which is quite gory, although these 2 kills don't involve a werewolf. Up until this moment, I'd been thinking that this was quite a tame film in terms of violence, the sort of thing that would be ideal for a 13-year-old just getting into horror, maybe. But the double kill is certainly the most violent thing in the movie, although still nothing compared to what you'll see these days. There's no sex in this movie. There's a very fleeting bit of nudity, but by and large, this film would struggle to get an 18 certificate, I think, in 2023. Characters are pretty good on an individual level. Like, they're easy to distinguish from each other. It's very easy to get to know everybody quite quickly in this. I particularly liked the ditzy girl who's just not very bright. Collectively, though, the characters can be very annoying. There's lots of bickering and arguing and, discussions about whether to go that way or that way. And I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't matter, because there's that much wandering in this film. You've got plenty of time to go here, there and everywhere. So stop arguing about it. But I don't think whoever wrote the script for this had enough skill to just make the dialogue entertaining, because there's just way too much annoying faff when it comes to the conversations. Music is also a little bit mixed. The quieter, softer sort of bits of music are quite creepy and atmospheric, but the heavier sound effects, the dramatic dun dun dun, it's got a bit of a religious tint. The music sounds like it would be more fitting for something like The Nun rather than a werewolf movie. And it crossed my mind watching this that maybe they should have tried to get that song from the Howling 2 back for this. In Howling 2, when you've got that singer on stage and he's singing that really good song, And then every now and again throughout the movie, we cut back to that singer. This would have been the perfect Howling sequel to bring that back. I just think it would have fitted with the Castle Scooby-Doo kind of thing vibe going on with this absolutely perfectly. But I guess they either didn't think of that, or it just would have been too expensive to get the rights to the song or whatever. But you know what? This movie is not that bad on the whole. I'd certainly love to try it out just once with a, shall we call it, a Top Gun Maverick quality of visual, but this is an improvement over Howling 4, just slightly, and let's not forget Howling 4 was a slight improvement over Howling 3, and I've seen Howling 6 before and I don't remember it being too bad. So sitting here right now, having done 5 of these now, I'm a lot more optimistic about these films than I was after I'd done number 3, where I was, quite frankly, in the depths of despair, just knowing that I still had 5 to go at that point. At this point of the review, I would normally show you the version of the film that I own, but as I said earlier, I watched this on Amazon Prime. I did not go out and buy a physical edition, so let's just skip straight to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give Howling 5, The Rebirth. We've got 1, 2, 2.5 bloody axes out of 5. That is my average score for a movie, so I guess this one isn't too bad actually, is it? And I would certainly be very curious to check it out again if it ever gets remastered. I don't think I would go back to it otherwise, I'll be completely honest about that. Right, I will wrap it up for today. I'll be back soon to do another review. Until next time, ow!